So hello guys, what's up and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me, your girl Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. You're welcome to another episode on our Legally Speaking series, and what we are going to be discussing today is a very serious one that a lot of people have been anticipating and have been reaching out to me to talk about. Now, there has been plenty of uproar, emotions and sentiments being thrown around on social media since the news of the 10-year-old pupil of Chrisland College made it out to the news. In a previous video, I gave a very peripheral surface analogy of what had happened, and I also showcased the account of the child's mother. But in today's video, I'm going to be giving you a thorough legal analysis of what has happened. Whether according to law, we can classify it as rape, or whether it's going to be classified as a consensual activity. This case involves minors, so certainly it is a very important one. So sit back, let us dive in dissecting this. Now, before I dive deep into the legally speaking part of it, it's important I mention a few points. A lot of blame have been apportioned to the parents of this child, while some people are of the opinion that it's the school's fault. But in my opinion, I think that both the parents and the school have their own portion of blame. First, anybody that's watched that video would certainly agree with me that that child was no novice. No. It didn't look like a first time, it didn't look like a second time, it didn't even look like a 10th time. It looked like an act that had been happening recurrently in the past before that video. So if a child who is alleged to be 10-year-old can possess that amount of skill and exposure, I think there should be some kind of dysfunction from the family end. First, I think the parents should run a 10-year audit on that child's life and investigate, pull her closer, make her to speak, investigate whether there has been any history of abuse on that child. I mean, all the men that have come in touch with her, from teachers to private lesson teachers to house helps, uncles, every male without an exception should be suspect to what has happened to that child, and that child should be made to be counseled, to be urged to reveal the genesis of that behavior. I really do suspect that that child has been a victim of sexual abuse for a very long time. Secondly, the importance of sex education now more than ever cannot be overemphasized. Gone are those days when parents would tell a girl that if a guy touches you like this, you're going to get pregnant. No. Kids of these days are not as dumb, and they are far more curious than we were back in the days. If you tell a child that, she's certainly going to experiment it to see whether you're telling the truth, because it's going to sound ridiculous to her. I think parents now should stop shying away from the topic of sex, because if you do not teach your children, they are going to learn it from the wrong sources, and they're going to learn it the wrong way. So as soon as your child becomes conscious of his or her body parts, as soon as the child can tell the difference between a male gender and a female gender, age-appropriate sex education should be given to that child, and not just given and abandoned, given and followed up. I also believe that there's some kind of lack of relationship, yes, between that child and her family, her mother, her father, or whoever her family members are. Because a child cannot go to Dubai and encounter such a thing, and it's not a secret. She knows that this tape is out, she knows that she's in trouble in school, and she didn't mention it to her mother. It tells a lot about the kind of relationship she has with her parents. So the truth is that for your children to feel very free and comfortable around you, to even approach you and admit, confess to you when they mess up, there has to be some kind of friendship. So it's not just about administering sex education and going back to being Margaret Thatcher. No, there should be a very conducive environment at home for the children to be free enough to come and tell you when they do right and when they do wrong. And I think that was seriously missing in this case. Another thing that it can easily be pointed out is the fact that this child had unlimited and unsupervised access to the internet. Because after this act made it out to the public, some more diggings on social media were done. And this child had social media accounts where she exhibited obscene, immoral conduct that even an adult will be scared of exhibiting on social media. This child was on social media, scantily dressed, dancing provocatively, doing things that even adults shouldn't be found doing. And the question remains, where were her parents while she did all these things? Wasn't she scared of being caught? The repercussions that would follow if she gets found out. There was no fear. She was acting like a child that was raised on the streets. That's the truth. She wasn't acting like she had any parental control or influence over her. There is a serious lacuna existing in that child's life. It almost seems like modern day parenting is about show off and whose child is the funkiest, whose child uses the latest gadget, and we're forgetting the fundamentals of parenting. Your child has no business owning a smartphone if you haven't enabled parental control functions on that gadget, because you're going to put your child under undue and unnecessary exposure that might accumulate in this kind of situation. There are no guarantees. Yes, I admit that. Sometimes you can train your child and the child will go to school and retrain herself, or allow his or her friends to train him or her. Yes, it happens. After investing so much morality and discipline in a child, it doesn't guarantee 100% that child is going to turn out right. Some children still turn out recalcitrant after such an investment, but we cannot say we wouldn't do our utmost. We still have to try our best to ensure that we do our part as parents. The school have their role to play, but the major function is on the family. Now, on the part of the school, it would be ridiculous to say that the school has no single atom of blame in these turnout of events. And don't forget to drop your own opinion in the comment section. If you think it's the parents that have the blame, drop in the comment section. If you think it is solely the parents, if you think it is solely the school, also let us know in the comment section. And if you think that both the parents, the school, perhaps the children have their own portions of blame, let us also know in the comment section. So on the school, whether we choose to admit it or not, these children were entrusted in the care of that school. And throughout that period of that trip, every second that those children were entrusted in the care of that school, the school is primarily responsible for their care, upkeep, welfare, and activities. If the school was of the opinion that they are incapable of handling the children, then they might as well have told the parents that every child should come with a guardian. But for the fact that they let the children come solely on their own, minors, they cannot exculpate themselves from liability. So the questions to ask is, one, what kind of accommodation provision was made for the children? Were the female children allowed to mingle and stay closely with the male children? Secondly, how much supervision was administered to these children? How many children embarked on that trip? And how many chaperones were assigned per child? Very important. Thirdly, were there periodic checks? How often did these periodic checks hold? These are important questions that the school do not have a choice but to supply answers to. Now, these questions point to why the incident happened in the first place. But there's another angle to it. After the incident happened, how did the school go about in handling the issue? If the account of the mother of this minor is anything to go by, why in the heavens will the school conceal such an abomination from the family of this child? Was she indeed made to undergo a pregnancy test without the consent or the knowledge of her parents? I mean, that is some serious act that could lead to litigation. It almost seemed like the school was more concerned about how to manage its reputation and do damage control rather than tackling it and solving it rightly. How the school have acted, if the account of this minor's mother is true, is serious negligence in law. And if charged to courts, they can be held in millions of naira as damages. Now, drilling down to legally speaking, the big question: was this rape or was it consensual sexual activity? From the video, for those who have seen that abominable video, there was no fuss, there was no violence, there was no threats, there were no scuffles, there were no crying or screaming or resistance. It seemed like two people having a good time. So a lot of people were livid with anger. Why should you ever say that this girl was raped? Don't you know what rape looks like? In fact, some people have gone so far to say that if anybody was raped there, it had to be the boy, not even the girl, because the girl was the one who was grinning more, smiling more, seemed like she was even enjoying herself more. She was the one that was taking charge. In fact, they say instead of the girl's mother to be screaming justice for her daughter, it should even be the boy's parents that should be crying justice for their son. So before I answer that question, let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think that it is consensual, or do you think that it was not? Now, on the face value, it sure looks like and can be said to be mutual sexual activity. But according to law, it can be categorized as rape. Now, the first thing to know is that not all rape cases have the element of force, violence, threat, or intimidation. And not all rape incidences must lack elements of consent. So there are some cases that despite consent was given, it can still be termed as rape. And one of these cases is if a party to that activity is a minor, then despite it seemed like she wholeheartedly gave herself to it, it could still be rape. And this kind of rape is called statutory rape. Why is it so? A lot of people might ask, confused. I saw this child wanted it, she was enjoying herself. How can you then go and say this child was raped? I would explain. Now, according to law, minors are deemed incapable, lacking in cognitive ability to give consent. The law believes that they are cognitively impaired to give consent. They do not have the cognitive might to give consent. And just as a Latin maxim that says nemo dat code non habet, that means that you cannot give what you don't have. So since the law deems that minors do not have consent, they automatically are unable to give consent because you cannot give what you do not have. Now, this case usually applies when it's an adult. Listen real good. This usually applies when it's an adult that took advantage of a child. But this particular Chrisland case is so complicated because judging by what we saw, it's possible that both the boy and the girl are minors, below the age of consent, both of them. So, if we say it was rape, who actually raped who? And that is why a lot of prosecutors are not quite optimistic to take up cases like this. I mean, charging a minor for rape in the case where there are two minors involved. How exactly is that supposed to be handled? Which of the two minors would you say is the victim? Would the girl automatically be the victim because of gender? Or is it the person that seemed to be the one to have enjoyed the act, to have been on top? How there is almost no way to decipher who the victim or the villain is in that case, where two minors were found in sexual intercourse. It is hard to justify why both minors are not being charged for the same offense. Because if the girl's mother comes out and says, oh, it's rape, your son did this to my daughter, the boy's parents too can also come out and say, my son is a minor, so we too claim the same thing. Your daughter did it to my son. So you can see the mess that this case is. And it will just turn out to be one big rumble of make with the craze they go situation. And honestly, the Nigerian law is a bit silent, quite unclear as to how to handle a case of alleged rape where two minors are involved. So at this juncture, I'll throw it back to you. How do you suggest, if you were an advisor to the parents, or if you were a parent to either the boy or the girl, how do you think that this case should be handled? Do you think that the girl's parents should sue the boy? After all, he looked a bit older, a bit more matured. He should have known better than to take advantage of their daughter, in quotes, as the mother said it. Or do you think that the boy's parents should even be the one to sue the girl? After all, she was the one in control, in charge of the whole activity. The boy's parents could as well say, it was your daughter that pinned my son down and took advantage of him. Or do you think that the parents should come together, keep this case away from court or prosecution, bring their children together, refine, remodel their children, counsel them, caution them, discipline them, reset them on the right path? How do you think this case should be handled? Do you think the schools should be sued for negligence and damages should be demanded? Or do you think that it's not the school's fault? They might have tried their best. Even the school came out to say that they had tucked these children in bed, but in the middle of the night, these children crawled out and still engaged in these abominable acts. Do you think it is not the school's fault? Do you think that is a defect in parental upbringing and background issues on the part of the children? Do you think that just as the girl's mother is crying out to the public demanding justice for her daughter, do you think that this male student should be prosecuted for drugging, as the mother alleged, and taking sexual advantage of her child? Or do you think that this should be resolved amicably? Both families should go back to retraining their children and making decent members of society of their already derailing ones. Do let me know what you think right in the comments. So at this juncture, we bring this video to an end. I hope you've been able to pick something from it. Don't forget to express all your thoughts, emotions, and sentiments in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not, because there is so much more coming your way. It's me, your girl, Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye.